Hello everyone and welcome back to the Apothecary Garden. Today I'm going to show you just an update of how things are looking. It's still pretty cold here, so the frost has done some damage to a lot of the plants, but my goal in showing you this is that you don't need a very large piece of land in order to grow things, that you can still grow in a small backyard garden space. And there's a lot of things that you can grow, so I hope that it does bring some inspiration, some hope, even if you've had some plants that have been decimated by the frost, and just give you a little bit of confidence to deal with these situations as they come up, as that's all a part of gardening and growing in general. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the video as well to help the channel grow, and I will see you all in just a little bit. So it's been a very dry and cold spring, but that has done wonders for the elderberry, which has quite a bit of blossoms this year as opposed to last year. And it does take a few years for these trees to really get established. Here we have some bone set coming up from last year. And there's going to be quite a bit here. They're probably going to be a bit crowded when they come up. Bone set is not an herb that a lot of people use anymore. It once was used for very serious ailments like flu, and it's kind of gone out of fashion, really. It's not something that people talk about that much anymore, but it does make some great salves as well. Because of the temperature fluctuations, the blueberries have taken a bit of a hit this year. Last year I had some huge harvests from these, but this year you can see there's some red going on in the leaves from the temperature fluctuations, and they look a little worse for wear, and some of the flowers that would normally form are missing, so, or there's some dropping of the buds, as you can see. So we'll see what happens with the blueberry harvest this year. You can see the new blueberries that I planted in the last garden tour video are turning red as well, so they may be a little stunted this year, and hopefully recovering more next year. This blueberry got completely crowded out by these Monarda. I think this is Monarda, and I may need to correct that so that the blueberry can flourish, but when it gets taller it wouldn't be quite as big of an issue. Now, something I didn't show you in the last video was this witch hazel. Now, this witch hazel was actually foraged. I found a witch hazel tree, and this was a baby branch coming off. And I took it home and planted it without too much hope, to be honest. Trees can be a little difficult to grow, and especially to try to forage and cultivate. But it's doing great despite all of the stress it went through last year, and also the overcrowding that was happening with the blackberries that you can see up here. Of course, the lemon balm always thrives and does well. And I'm really going to have to harvest a bunch of this and remove it from the beds because it is spreading where it doesn't belong. Here's a second elderberry tree that I have. I have 3 in total. This is Sambucus nigra, and really they do better when you have multiple, so I have this variety, and there was one other variety that I bought of the same, I guess, species, and I planted them all at the same time. And you can see the other one was very tall. This one is also tall, but not as tall, but it's a little bit bushier. So it's interesting to see how differently they grow. Little guy down here, this is actually a mulberry tree. It is a dwarf ever-bearing mulberry. So we'll see how this goes. I planted 3 of these, but you can see that the leaves are kind of struggling a bit. We've had so many frosts and mini heat waves that the weather has really taken a toll on all of the plants. So we'll see how well they do. I'm very excited to grow them. I love mulberries, and it would be great to have multiple mulberry trees. And here we have our nettle patch, one of my nettle patches. And it's such a beautiful, useful herb. Now these will continue to grow through summer a bit, but they do prefer the cooler weather, and they're best harvested young. So I'll be harvesting these soon, actually. And then you'll get one more harvest from them if you harvest in the spring. So I usually let them kind of grow and flower so that I have multiple plants next year. I planted some snapdragons from seed for the first time. I've transplanted snaps from the store before, but this is the first time growing from seed, and they're actually looking really healthy. I don't know when they're supposed to flower. Actually, I think they're supposed to flower soon, but I planted them late because of the weather. So we'll see how they go. As I mentioned, this is Monarda fistulosa. This is bee balm, and it's a very beautiful and useful herb. Now, when I planted them last year from seed, they did not flower. So I'm hoping this year we'll see the beautiful blooms that they create. There's such a benefit to the pollinators that it's fantastic to have in anyone's garden. These are very crowded, but they'll make for a beautiful patch. And really, anytime you have a useful herb covering soil, it helps to prevent weeds from growing. So I'm all for that. This beautiful flower is actually the sage flower, and the bees really enjoy them. They are gorgeous once they open up. They're very fragrant, and it's just such a beautiful plant to have, of course, for medicinal purposes, but again, for the pollinators. Here's another little start of Monarda that I planted over in this different area, just trying to diversify the areas in the garden that I have and trying to crowd out weeds as well. So hopefully that will fill in a bit. This is one of my rose plants. I have a painted rose variety and Lady of Shalott rose as well. So there's the one, and then this is, I believe this is the Lady of Shalott. It's like an orange color. I have 2 onions here that are trying to go to seed, I think. And I may let them. I haven't done that before. These were overwintered, which usually there's not a problem with this. However, because of the unpredictable weather pattern that we've been having, that's why they've gone to seed. So really I should pick these soon, harvest them, because they're not really going to grow. They're sending all their energy up into the seed pod instead of the bulb, unfortunately. But I may want to collect the seeds. And this delightful bloom that you can see here, this is actually a Sweet William that managed to seed itself from the balcony into the garden. So I now have them growing here, and they're really beautiful and again very beneficial for the bees, so I just kind of let them be. Now down here we have one of my favorites. This is calendula. So we'll have some beautiful calendula flowers growing there soon. And calendula, of course, is so beneficial, especially for the skin, but also internally for teas and medicine. This is a gooseberry plant, and I have yet to actually see any berries on it. I've had it for about 2 years now, and it has gotten bigger and is doing better than when I first purchased it. However, I think the birds have been just eating them before I even see them because I haven't seen one berry. This little guy, you can barely see, is a blackberry seedling that actually just was probably seeded by the birds that I'm trying to let us get established and grow into a full blackberry. I'm hoping it's the same variety as the others that I have, which are thornless triple crown. Okay, this beauty, this is wood betony, which I'm very excited to see. I planted it last year, and it's now established and will make beautiful purple flowers. This giant plant here is called Elecampane, and it will create these big, beautiful yellow flowers that are so good for you. And actually the leaves are very fuzzy on it as well, similar to kind of like a mullein. But this is a very different plant, and it will get very tall. So, all right, this one down here, this is my other mulberry plant, seedling. And I'm hoping that this one does better than the others since I planted it a little later. And hopefully we won't get such a hard freeze or multiple freezes that the others have endured. I have one in there you can barely see. It's tied to that little stick, trying to keep it from dying. I have some lavender growing here. This is supposed to be a larger variety of lavender. So we'll see how this one does. And then this lavender is a survivor. I had it planted in a pot that fell over, and this spring I found it after the winter, and it was still alive, so we'll see how it does. It's turning green, so we'll see. It's a little tall and spindly, but I'm hoping it will flesh out a little. I have some Aglamonia eupatoria growing down there, which is one of my favorites. Really can't wait for this one to get larger and established so I can use it for tea. And here's the beautiful yarrow just starting to bud. Very exciting. Lots of flowering tops about to come through. It's very crowded though, a very large patch. And here is my other elderberry. This is the smallest of the 3 elderberries that I have. And it's flowering, but this one doesn't have as many flowers. So not quite sure why that is, but it is branching out a bit finally this year. You see some lower branches coming through. These are my blackberries coming in. Everything's much slower this year because the spring has just been so very cold and unpredictable for all of the plants. So I'm hoping everything makes it through okay, just the way that it normally does. But because it's been colder, you know, there is chances that things have suffered some cold damage and may be stunted or may not even come in at all. There are some plants that I normally see that have not come through yet that I'm hoping will still survive. These are my marshmallow plants, my beloved marshmallows. I love them so much. They're so fuzzy and cheerful, and they make beautiful flowers that I use for tea. And of course the root is the most medicinal part of the marshmallow, but I love to use the leaves because they add that emulsant or demulsant property. And down here at the bottom, I have some echinacea and valerian. It's hard to see them at the moment because they're being overcrowded by the elderberries, but hoping they get a little larger. The elderberry is kind of choking out a lot of the light that they need. So you'll notice in these plots here, these raised beds, that there's nothing substantial growing in them at the moment. I do have some onions that I planted in there, and I have some lemon balm that is growing. Otherwise, a lot of this is dandelions, and there are some herbs. I allow the dandelions to grow because I harvest them to use, as well as keeping them there for the first food of the year for bees, as bees need the pollen from the dandelions during the spring when there's not much else blooming. So they are one of the first blooming flowers that we have, and they're very important as a food source for the bees. So I do keep a lot of them here blooming, and as I mentioned, I do also use them and harvest them for making jelly and teas and salves, but they're in abundance here. And I do have some things like mint growing in here, calendula, which is a very beneficial herb for everyone to have and grow in their gardens. You can use it for cuts, scrapes, burns. It's wonderful for your skin. And of course, they're not blooming yet. They are just in their leafy form. But in these beds, eventually, I will be transplanting my tomatoes, which I will show you. But because the weather has been so very cold and unpredictable, it's still a little early. I may end up planting 1 or 2 of my largest tomatoes in the beds tonight or tomorrow, but we'll see. And this is my other raised bed, which you can see again, full of dandelions and lemon balm at the moment. But I do have some things that I had planted in, such as this dill, and there's other things that will be breaking through the surface as the temperatures begin to warm. And there's sage in there as well. But I just want to draw to your attention that your garden does not have to look picture perfect, especially if you are growing it for medicinal purposes, because the most medicinal gardens are full of things like dandelions and things that people would mostly call weeds. And if you understand herbs and the way that things grow, these plants are there for a reason. They actually do improve your soil. They're beneficial for the bees. and they are a first food source for a lot of pollinators in the spring. So there's really only benefits to allowing for these things to be there. They're there to help the garden space, help the soil. They do add nutrients, and their deep tap roots improve the structure of your soil. So really there's no harm in having them. In fact, it only makes your soil better. And where there's more dandelions, there's less grass. So I approve of them for that reason. But you'll notice that there is a ton of grass as well in these beds. I do my best to kind of pull out the grass when I can, but my goal is to have crowding herbs like this Monarda that will eventually replace all of the grass, and then there will be less grassy patches growing. And also I have some mulch that I've started putting down, and I'll finish doing that when all of the perennials that I'm growing have made their way to the surface, so that I don't cover them, bury them to the point where they will not come back. Another plan that I have, and another good option, is to have something like this, which I believe this is called snowdrop flower. I'll put the name of the flower in the caption. But this is a plant that is supposed to spread a little. I think I should have bought a few more. But having things like this can really help to fill in some gaps. And again, just any time that you can plant something instead of having grass is going to help. So up here we have a bunch of tomatoes that need to be planted in various degrees of health. Some of them have become extremely large and tall. Some of them are still kind of small, and some of them have some issues developing just from being in the house for so long. I've been hardening them off, but there's been some little minor incidents with them, but most of the time in my experience they straighten out pretty well once they're in the soil and in ideal conditions. But don't be disheartened if you're having issues with your tomatoes. Some of these are very much ready to go out now. As you can see, I have flowers growing on this one. Is probably forming some tomatoes actually, because it has been outside hardening off, and pretty sure it's been pollinated at some point. And I've had that happen before in the past. I tend to start my tomatoes very early to give them the best growth, but I may put the tallest one, I may actually put it out tonight, even though it is not ideal temperatures, but just because to keep them inside longer is just going to stunt them anyhow. So I really need to do something with them. But I have lots of other things growing up here. I haven't showed you guys my balcony yet. I have radishes in this one and in this one. Various kinds of radishes. I have daikon in here, French breakfast, and I think globe. So I'm excited, but as you'll see, the squirrel actually gets to these sometimes and eats the radish, and I'm just left with the greens there. But hopefully it will not destroy them all. I do have a squirrel that comes up here and eats my strawberries and radishes. And I have some onions that are started, little baby onions in there. I actually need to plant some more, but I have them kind of sprinkled around all of my pots. And I have some strawberry mint that I'm growing here. And I have chives, thyme, and oregano in this pot. This pot will eventually be full of marigolds because I have marigolds in them every year and they self-seed. This one is sage, and I also have lots of sage kind of scattered around in different areas. I have some chocolate mint coming back from last year. This is actually a pot of red clover and self-heal that I just let be like this because these are very medicinal herbs and I collect both of them. Over here is a little baby rosemary that I sprouted that's just starting to grow. And in here, this is Roman chamomile and some more chamomile here, probably the German chamomile. More mint. This is sunchokes, so I'm very excited to see how these go. I got some as a gift and I'm just going to see how they turn out and what that experience is like. I've heard a lot of interesting things. These are my sweet williams that come back every year. They'll be purple up here, this little fuzzy part. They're usually fully bloomed by now, but the spring has been very cold. And here they are in this pot as well. So these are strawberries, but I honestly don't do a lot with my strawberries anymore because I find that I don't get huge harvests like this, and the ones that I do get, the squirrels just eat them. So I just let them grow. Sometimes I'll harvest them for the leaves because the leaves are medicinal, but I actually don't do much with them other than that. There's a nice healthy little sage in there. And some oregano that's been a little beat up by the weather. That was a seed start. And my whole parsley in here looks sad. Have some strawberry mint going on in here. These will be for tomatoes, and in here I have some onions. Oh, I don't actually know what this is. It's such a pretty little flower. Sometimes you find little surprises like this growing. I love that. And here's some radishes that I planted. Just like the onions, I sprinkled them around. Oh, the squirrel's getting to them. Okay. You can see where the squirrels just dug a hole here. I don't know if that one's been completely decimated or not, but I'm going to try to save it. But it just gets in there, and yeah, here's another one that's been eaten, uprooted. Sometimes it'll eat one next to it, and these will just get uprooted. And there's another little radish. These are all onions that I need to plant out. I just have to get a chance to plant them all. This is more chocolate mint. It's delightful. This is basil. It's looking a little beat up. I tried to pinch the tops to make it grow more, so we'll see. That helps it to pick up some of its, pick up some pace. And here's another of these sunchokes. I really need to cover these with more soil. You really need to top them with more soil. They're supposed to produce kind of these tubers that are a little bit hard to digest from what I hear, but they can make a lot of food. So excited to experiment with those. And then in my herb tower, I have some various different things. Purple basil is there that I started from seed, and then some sage. And I did have St. John's wort growing, but I think some kind of spurge has overtaken that. And it looks like lettuce is growing in that pot along with something else that I'm not sure of yet. It's always a wonderful surprise to see what has self-seeded and volunteered. And then over here, I had some cucumbers started. We'll see if they are going to germinate yet or not with this weather. But yeah, I actually grow a lot up here. This is where I first started growing, was on a balcony. So if that's all you have is just a small little sunny spot in front of your house or behind it or a balcony, you can still grow things. You can still grow things on a windowsill. So don't be discouraged about the space that you have or how it looks or how, how it compares to anyone else's space. Just kind of focusing in on what you can do and start from there, and you may be surprised with where you end up, because I never saw myself growing this many things, but every year I just find new things that interest me, that I really am interested to grow, and it makes such a difference as well with our groceries, especially in the summer when I grow all of our tomatoes and our peppers and onions. It really does help. So in any case, this is pretty much it at the moment. Just really trying to focus in on these transplants as soon as I can. Hopefully the weather will be cooperative. And a nice deep hole. Generally, it's best to try to bury them on their side, but I may not have a deep enough hole to do that this time. The trick with large tomatoes like this is to mound the dirt as high as you can. And if there's any lower branches that would get buried, just remove them. So this is not very stable for this large tomato. Let's see if I have